The WNBA just exposed their biggest problem yet, and Sophie Cunningham caught them red-handed. What should have been a celebration of Indiana Fever's playoff victory turned into a viral moment that has fans demanding answers about why certain players keep getting targeted by the league's own security. The footage is everywhere, and once you see what really happened, you'll understand why Sophie's reaction is being called the most justified response in WNBA history. But before we dive into the shocking details, let me know in the comments if you think Sophie Cunningham is being unfairly singled out by the league. Your opinion matters, and I want to hear what you think about this controversy. Picture this scene. The Indiana Fever just secured a crucial playoff win that fans had been waiting years to witness. Lexi Hull made the game-winning steal, Kelsey Mitchell was on fire, and Aaliyah Boston dominated the paint. The arena was electric with celebration, but instead of headlines about this historic victory, we got something nobody expected. Sophie Cunningham, wearing a massive leg brace and clearly injured, was standing near midcourt when a league-hired security guard decided to confront her like she was some kind of threat. She wasn't rushing the court. She wasn't causing any disturbance. She was literally just standing there supporting her teammates when Odyssey Sims went down with an injury. What happened next would shock everyone watching. The security guard got right in Sophie's face, trying to intimidate her into moving away from checking on her injured opponent. Keep in mind that players are allowed to come onto the court when someone gets hurt to show concern and sportsmanship. It happens in every single game, but for some reason, this particular guard decided Sophie Cunningham was breaking some unwritten rule. The cameras caught everything, including Sophie's incredible response. She didn't back down 1 inch. She stood her ground with that famous Cunningham glare that says you picked the wrong one today. The viral clip shows Sophie maintaining her composure while this overzealous security guard tries to physically move her. She's literally wearing a leg brace, can barely walk, and this person is treating her like she's about to start a brawl. Sophie's reaction was perfect. She crossed her arms, planted her feet, and gave the guard a look that basically said, "Try me." The crowd saw it, the cameras caught it, and within minutes, social media absolutely exploded with support for Sophie. But that wasn't the whole story. This incident reveals something much darker about how the WNBA treats certain players. Sophie Cunningham has been painted as a villain by the league and media for years now. Why? Because she's confident, outspoken, and refuses to play by their preferred narrative. She doesn't apologize for being herself. She doesn't shrink when people want her to disappear. And apparently, that makes her a target for harassment even from the league's own security staff. Think about the timing here. January 2025, and the WNBA is still dealing with the same issues that plagued them throughout 2024. The selective enforcement, the double standards, the protection of certain players while others get thrown to the wolves. Sophie has been dealing with this treatment her entire career. She gets called dirty when she plays physical defense, but when other players do the exact same thing to her or Caitlin Clark, suddenly it's just part of the game. The hypocrisy is staggering. Remember when referees said they felt uncomfortable around DeJounte Carrington earlier this season? The league immediately rushed to her defense. The Players Association released statements. Everyone acted like it was the greatest injustice in basketball history. But when Sophie Cunningham gets physically confronted by security for literally just standing there, radio silence from the league office. No statements, no apologies, nothing. What makes this even more revealing is that Sophie wasn't even playing in this game. She was injured on the sidelines, just there to support her team, and still, somehow, she becomes the target. Fans are starting to connect the dots, and they don't like what they're seeing. The pattern is too obvious to ignore anymore. Players like Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark, who bring massive fan bases and media attention, get treated worse by officials and league staff than players who toe the company line. The social media reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of the incident, hashtags like Justice for Sophie and WNBA Exposed were trending across every platform. Fans posted side-by-side comparisons showing how differently situations get handled depending on which player is involved. They highlighted dozens of examples where Sophie has been targeted, fouled hard, or disrespected without any consequences for the perpetrators. But the moment she stands up for herself, or even just stands still apparently, she's the problem. Here's where things get really interesting. Sources close to the situation are now revealing that this wasn't just some random security guard having a bad day. This person was specifically assigned to monitor certain players during games. And guess whose name keeps coming up on that watch list? Sophie Cunningham. The same player who drives engagement, sells tickets, and brings eyeballs to the league is apparently considered such a threat that she needs special surveillance even when she's injured and not playing. The footage tells the whole story better than any words could. You can see Sophie's teammates looking confused about why she's being confronted. You can see fans in the background pointing and recording because they know something wrong is happening. And most importantly, you can see Sophie's face go from confusion to anger to that cold determination that says, I'm not backing down from this. That's the moment that went viral. That's the image that has fans rallying behind her like never before. But here's what the league doesn't seem to understand. Every time they pull something like this, they're only making Sophie more popular. Her jersey sales spike after these incidents. Her social media following grows. Her highlights get more views. The WNBA is literally creating the exact opposite effect of what they apparently want. Instead of diminishing her influence, they're amplifying it. Instead of making her go away, they're making her a symbol of resistance against unfair treatment. What happened next would shock everyone even more. After the confrontation, Sophie took to social media with a response that perfectly captured what everyone was thinking. She didn't rant or rage. She simply posted the video with a caption that said, "Standing up for what's right shouldn't be controversial." Within 12 hours, that post had over 3 million views and hundreds of thousands of likes. Professional athletes from other sports started commenting in support. Even players from rival WNBA teams were defending her. The Indiana Fever organization found themselves in an interesting position. On one hand, they just won a huge playoff game. On the other hand, one of their players was being harassed by league security for no valid reason. To their credit, multiple Fever players spoke up in Sophie's defense. Caitlin Clark, who has dealt with her own share of unfair treatment, posted a story showing support. Aaliyah Boston called the incident unnecessary and disappointing. The team unity was clear. They weren't going to let Sophie stand alone. This brings us to the bigger picture that nobody wants to talk about. The WNBA has a massive problem with how they treat their most marketable stars. Sophie Cunningham generates more social media engagement than players who get 10 times the promotional push from the league. Caitlin Clark brought more new fans to women's basketball than anyone in history, yet she's been getting hammered on the court all season with minimal protection from officials. These aren't coincidences. This is a pattern. The numbers don't lie either. Games featuring Sophie Cunningham consistently draw a higher viewership. Her highlight reels get millions of views on TikTok and Instagram. She's exactly the type of personality that could help grow the league into mainstream relevance. But instead of embracing that, the WNBA seems determined to make her the villain. They let commentators trash her on broadcasts. They allow officials to target her with questionable calls. And now they're letting security guards physically confront her when she's not even playing. Fans are starting to ask the uncomfortable questions. Is this about basketball or is it about something else? Why do certain players get protected while others get persecuted? How can the league claim they want growth and popularity while simultaneously alienating the players who bring in the most fans? The Sophie Cunningham security incident isn't just one isolated event. It's a symptom of a much larger disease within WNBA leadership. What's even more frustrating is the missed opportunity here. Sophie Cunningham should be one of the faces of the league. She's talented, charismatic, and completely authentic. She doesn't put on a fake persona for cameras. She doesn't give boring, politically correct answers in interviews. She's real, raw, and relatable. That's exactly what younger fans want to see. That's what drives engagement in 2025. But the WNBA is stuck in some outdated mindset where they think they can control the narrative by controlling the players. The aftermath of this incident is still developing. Fans are calling for the security guard to be fired, or at least disciplined. They want an official apology from the league to Sophie. They want transparency about why certain players are on watch lists while others can do whatever they want without consequences. But most importantly, they want change. They want the WNBA to stop punishing players for being popular and start protecting the stars who are actually growing the game. Here's something that makes this whole situation even more ridiculous. The game was already over when this confrontation happened. The Fever had won. The celebration was happening. There was zero threat of any altercation or problem. Sophie was literally just standing there in her leg brace, probably in pain, trying to be a good sport and check on an injured opponent, and somehow that warranted security intervention. Make it make sense. The legal implications are interesting too. Some lawyers are already discussing whether Sophie could have a case for harassment or discrimination. When you're singled out for treatment that other players don't receive, when you're confronted physically without cause, when your ability to do your job is interfered with by league employees, that raises serious questions. The WNBA might have just opened themselves up to a lawsuit they really don't want. But Sophie Cunningham isn't looking for legal action. She just wants to play basketball and be treated fairly. She wants the same respect and protection that other players receive. She wants to be able to stand on a basketball court without being harassed by security. These aren't unreasonable requests. These are basic expectations that any professional athlete should have. Yet somehow for Sophie, even these simple things become controversial. The fan response has been overwhelmingly supportive. Fever fans, Mercury fans, even fans of rival teams are united in defending Sophie. They see the injustice, they recognize the pattern, and they're not staying quiet about it anymore. Every WNBA social media post is getting flooded with comments about the Sophie situation. Every broadcast is getting emails and messages demanding answers. The pressure is building, and the league can't ignore it much longer. What really exposes the double standard is comparing this to other recent incidents. When certain players get into actual physical altercations on the court, the league bends over backwards to defend them. When certain players make controversial statements or take controversial actions, they get protected and promoted. But Sophie Cunningham stands still in a leg brace, and suddenly she's public enemy number one? The math isn't mathing, as the kids say. This controversy is already affecting the league's reputation. Casual fans who are starting to pay attention to the WNBA are seeing these clips and asking why they should support a league that treats its players this way. Potential sponsors are wondering if this is the kind of drama they want their brands associated with. The WNBA keeps saying they want to be taken seriously as a major professional sports league, but then they pull amateur hour nonsense like this. The timing couldn't be worse for the league either. Coming off a 2024 season that saw record viewership largely thanks to players like Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham, they should be building on that momentum. Instead, they're creating unnecessary controversies that overshadow the actual basketball. They're giving people reasons to turn away instead of reasons to tune in. It's self-sabotage at its finest. Sophie's response through all of this has been nothing short of legendary. She hasn't backed down. She hasn't apologized for something she didn't do wrong. She's maintained her dignity while calling out the obvious injustice. That takes courage in a league where speaking up can get you blackballed. But Sophie Cunningham has never been one to stay quiet when something needs to be said. That's why fans love her. That's why she matters. The question now is what happens next. Will the WNBA acknowledge their mistake and make changes? Will they continue to pretend nothing happened while the controversy grows? Will other players start speaking up about their own experiences with unfair treatment? The Sophie Cunningham security incident might just be the catalyst for a larger conversation about discrimination and bias within the WNBA power structure. One thing is certain, Sophie Cunningham won this confrontation without throwing a punch or raising her voice. She won by standing her ground and letting the world see exactly what kind of treatment she faces. She won by exposing the hypocrisy and double standards that plague the WNBA. And she won by showing young players that you don't have to accept unfair treatment just because someone in authority is dishing it out. If you think Sophie Cunningham deserves an apology from the WNBA, hit that like button right now and let them know we're paying attention. Subscribe to this channel for more coverage of what's really happening in women's basketball, not just what the league wants you to see. And drop a comment below with your thoughts on whether this security guard should face consequences for harassing an injured player. Your voice matters in this conversation. The WNBA has a choice to make. They can continue down this path of selective enforcement and biased treatment, or they can recognize that players like Sophie Cunningham are actually good for business. They can keep trying to control the narrative, or they can embrace the authentic personalities that fans actually want to see. The ball is in their court now, but based on how they've handled things so far, don't hold your breath waiting for them to make the right call.